Recording. Hold on a second. Okay. So welcome. I'm Debbie Giaquinto. Welcome to Wine Time. I'm the Hudson Valley Wine Goddess. And today we're going to be talking about wine country travel. And what many people don't know is I owned a travel agency for 20 years. And during the course of those 20 years, probably for a good portion of it, I knew Pat. Pat Thompson did wine country travel, and she still does in Italy. And then I met Christie recently, and she is a cruise specialist, and she is going to talk about wine country cruises. So I'm not in the industry anymore, so I thought I'd get the specialists. And although I still like have my little dings here and there. And I have to say, it's great. For 20 years, Pat and I never met each other.
Yeah, it's true.
We're seeing each other here on Black. We were like two ships passing in different tastings.
Yes, I'm sure. And we did try, but here we are. So it's nice to meet you finally.
So why don't you each, we'll start with Pat and then go to Christie. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we'll talk about planning wine vacations.
Okay, I am co-founder of a wine tour company called Dolce Vita Wine Tours. We have been around, this is now our 17th year. We were founded in '99. We're a boutique company. We operate in Italy, Spain, mostly Italy. My husband, who will be coming in any moment now, is Italian, and so that's where the bulk of our tours are. We also do a tour in Rioja and a tour in Portugal in the Douro Valley. All of our tours are wine related, thus the name La Dolce Vita Wine Tours. Some of them also incorporate hiking. We have 4 or 5 hiking itineraries where we hike in the morning and we go to a winery in the afternoon. We also do that for bikers on a custom tour basis. We have 17 itineraries from the Alps to Sicily. They're all about 6 days or 7 days, depending. The hiking tours are 7. And they're usually run by me and or my husband, who just came in. So that's it in a nutshell.
Hi, Claudio. Let's see. Where is he? Hey.
Hi.
Christie, you want to take it away and tell us what you do?
So my name is Christie Unsworth. My company is called Cruise Planners, and I do both land and sea travel. What I'm focusing on, and for the purpose of this evening, is wine river cruising down the rivers in Europe, and the wonderful experience you can have on the ships. So you would embark on a ship on one of your rivers in Europe. You can do a pre or a post tour as well. There is a wine expert or host on board who is with you throughout your travels. You stop at all different little villages along the way and go to local wineries and have local wine tastings, visit wine cellars, and really talk to the wine experts in those areas. And the nice part about the trip is that everything's included. So you have all your meals and your drinks included on your trip. And it's really an authentic experience of the little towns along the river.
So when somebody wants to plan their wine vacation, when they're sitting around and they're like, what are we going to do this summer, this spring, this fall? What are some key points, and I put it out to both of you, that they should be looking for to do, whether it's if it's a land vacation, Pat, what should they look for? And Christie, if it's a cruise vacation, what should we look for? We'll start with Pat.
Well, there's 2 things I would like to cover during the course of this. One is talking about why it might make sense to use a tour operator as opposed to doing it yourself. But let me answer your question first as addressing the DIY folks out there. If you're planning your own tour, your own vacation without any help from anybody, I have some tips. Again, these are mostly from people who have contacted us and said, help me. I've gotten myself in a fix, or we find out afterwards that they did this at some other time prior to our tours or what have you. If you are going, and here I'm speaking about Europe, traveling in wine country in America is a completely different thing. Obviously much easier, first because of the language. There's no language issues. If you are traveling in Europe anywhere, first, make appointments. You have to make appointments in advance at wineries. Why is that? It's because a lot of wineries are small, owner-run, or at least those might be the ones you want to visit if you don't want a big commercial winery. And so it's kind of rude just to go up to somebody's house and knock on their door and expect them to drop everything in order to, you know, pour you some wine and give you a tour of their winery. So you do need to make appointments. Some little visual aids. If you're going to Italy, you know, there's guides like this. This is the Gamba Rosso book or Slow Food. These all come out every year, and they have addresses and phone numbers and contact information for everybody. So that's a good resource to have. But the other important thing is to leave time for serendipity. You do not want to book yourself so tightly that you're either always on the road or your schedule is so full that you have no time for anything else. Because what you really want to do is to ask some of the locals for their tips about their favorite wineries. They could be friends, it could be a new place, it could be whatever. And if you have some opening in your schedule, then you can just, you know, they can call on your behalf and you can come over and have a great experience. I can keep going or I can pause a moment.
You can keep going.
Okay.
I'm loving it because.
Yeah, so the other thing, if you.
And also restaurants, they gotta ask the locals.
Bracket. If you have time, so let's say you make a morning appointment and an afternoon appointment. And by the way, in Europe, appointments are you're usually spending a couple of hours with people. You are not just simply walking into a tasting room, knocking some wine down and moving on to the next guy.
It's not like it is if you go to Napa or
the walk-in tasting room idea really doesn't exist for the most part in most of Europe, unless, again, you're getting to larger commercial wineries. There is, however, in Italy at least, something called the Enoteca Regionale. And these are officially sponsored wine showcases for a particular region. So let's say you go to Barolo. In the basement of the castle of Barolo is an Enoteca where there might be any given day, 20 different wines open on enomatic dispensers. You pay a small fee. You have your choice of, you know.
Oh, wait a second. It's like an ATM card because I did this in Chianti. It's like
right. Rather than Chianti has the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like 200 and some wines on enomatic dispenser there. And so you can do a great power tasting at a place like that on your own time, without appointment. So those are useful to know. The other thing I would suggest is read up before you go so that you know who you're visiting and you have at least some semblance of intelligent questions. You show you've done your homework a little bit. And what this does is it not only makes it better for you, but if the winemakers see that you have an interest, if you have knowledge and curiosity and, have taken the effort to do that, they're going to be more involved with you. which means the tasting might be prolonged. They might bring out some special wines. They might open some older vintages. This happens with me quite a bit when I'm with clients. You know, it really, if there's questions, it makes a huge difference when they see you're interested or not. The other thing to know is when you go to a winery, they do not expect you to buy. Don't feel pressured to do that at all. I think it is nice to ask for their importer, because this is about public relations. It is about brand loyalty, and you might fall in love with their wines, in which case you want to get them when you're back in the States. So if you know their importer, you can contact their importer, find out who distributes them locally, and be able to get the wines here. The other thing to know is, unlike Napa, they do not ship generally. They're just not set up for it. They are increasingly, but 9 times out of 10, you are not going to be able to say, oh, I'd like to ship a case. If you want to ship a case home rather than get it in America, let's say there's a special, some single vineyard wine that's in very limited production, and they happen to have the, 2010 vintage of this, and you're never going to find it anywhere else, and you want to ship, you can take it to a place like a mailboxes, etc. Ask them; they'll tell you where you can do shipping from that area.
You can also get a
it'll run you about $10 to $15 per bottle based on a case of wine.
Pat, there's also suitcases they can travel with that carry a case of wine. So, you can check that, or
that's true.
Carry your clothes and check the suitcase.
Yeah. You can do that. You just have to get it on the train and off if you're going that way.
It's got wheels.
No, well, it's true, but
I've got one.
If you're in a car and you're going to the airport and you've got to schlep all your luggage around, it's still another piece of luggage. But yes, that is a good investment, especially if you go to wine country a lot. But otherwise, it does add about $10 to $15 a bottle if you're shipping a case, which is well worth it if you're buying expensive wines. If you're into the Barolo, Brunello category, and those wines are going to cost a good 30% to 50% less when you buy them in Europe, and so it's worth it then. If it's just a simple bottle of Dolcetto that you get for €7, it's clearly not worth it unless your sweetheart proposes to you over the bottle and you just want to bring something home like that. So those are just a few things to think about.
Hey, Christy, do you want to talk a little bit about the wine country cruises?
Sure. So when you decide to take a river cruise, it's more of a package deal. So once you decide to sign on, you will call your travel agent and they can decide with you which region you would like to travel to, get your air together. If you want to do your land tour beforehand, decide where you want to stay beforehand and get your transfers set up. And then once you do your land tour and you want to get on your cruise, then that is all taken care of for you. So it's kind of nice to have the package deal and that everything's taken care of. You get to the cruise and there are English speaking people on the cruise for you to guide you through your tour. You want to decide which area you want to go in. Like, have you ever traveled to France or Spain, or, which part of Europe you would like to travel to? Again, it is really important to educate yourself on the region, what different areas you will be traveling to in the region, what different wineries are in that region for you to go to. And it's really an authentic feel for the trip. And again, I think the guided tour is a nice piece to it, and to know that you're with a group of people, that it's already set up for you, whatever, like you were saying about being able to get into the wineries or whatever, that's already taken care of for you through the cruise company. So there are different itineraries that you can read through to get an idea for what you're going to do when you get there.
Are there, Christy, are there pre and post options so that you're able to go and extend or, extend your stay?
And yep, and you don't necessarily have to pick an area that is right by where you're cruising from. You could always go to one part of Europe and then fly to where your cruise is going to take, leave from. So, like for instance, I really do like the AMA waterways. They have a whole wine cruise itinerary. One of them is through Europe's castles also along the way, which is really nice. But they have a whole catalog that explains each trip in detail and what you would be doing on each of the trips. And, it is important for you to get educated and realize what it is you're getting for what you're paying for. So like, for instance, there's one called the Taste of Bordeaux. So you would spend 2 nights in Paris, and then you would do a 7-night round trip cruise from Bordeaux, and then it ends with 2 nights in the Loire Valley. And so everything's included in your price, from your hotel stay to your transfers, to your shore excursions. There's fine dining on board, and your cocktails and your vineyard excursions.
Okay, Pat, let's talk a little bit about your trips, because you've got the cooking trips, the biking trips, the hiking trips, and just the, and it all focuses through the wineries. And let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, let someone wants to go on, you bike and you stop at the winery.
Well, yeah, no. In fact, it's funny. My friends still think, they're like, you do bike tours, right? It's like, no, we do wine tours. But we did start out with some
bike through the wineries,
biking tours, and the common denominator is the wine for sure. Whether we're doing biking tours or hiking tours, let's just talk about the active tours for a second. We don't go from winery to winery. We get the exercise out of the way in the morning. Then we maybe have time to clean up, maybe not. Maybe we just go to the wineries in our hiking shoes or what have you. But no, we don't. Both for safety and also just because it's so darn hard to bike anyway up those hills. We made a mistake way early on when we used to come into San Gimignano from Chianti, and we would bike from Chianti into San Gimignano, and the last, 7 miles is basically an uphill. And we would stop along the way because there was this wonderful estate, an ancient estate that goes back centuries. And these estates used to, down their long, windy, cypress-lined road, would have a roadside stand where they would sell their wine. And some still do. And one has a little picnic area there. So we broke for lunch there. We had lunch, we had some wine, and then we had to get back on our bikes and bike up the rest of the hill. And by that point, it's like 2 PM. You just don't want to do that. So we reconfigured that tour. And so in general, for the active tours, we do whatever we're doing in the morning, and then we go to a winery in the afternoon. The majority of our tours, though, are not hiking or biking. We call them our regular wine tours. And those go into 2 categories. One are just, regular wine tours. The other we call extreme wine tours. So we have 2 itineraries in the extreme category that are for the real wine nerds. We were asked to design a tour in Piedmont a number of years ago by the Society of Wine Educators, which we did, and we liked it a lot, and we kept that itinerary, and we created a parallel one in Tuscany. And those are 6 days, just like our normal tours, but they kind of cut out some of the other activities that, if you're not a wine nerd, you might actually enjoy. So that gets us to the quote unquote regular wine tours, which have usually 2 to 3 wineries a day, usually 2. 3 is a bit much, and some other activities. So we might have a cooking lesson. In Chianti, we go to a farmhouse where there's a couple sisters who are our cook/hosts. In Piedmont, we actually go to our house. My husband's great-grandmother had this little medieval townhouse, which we now live in. And so we go there for our cooking lesson in Piedmont. We try to bring in art or architecture, archaeology where it exists. So for instance, in Sicily, we'll be going to a Greek temple, we'll be going to a Byzantine cathedral. In Siena, in our Tuscany tours, we often stop in Siena and spend part of the day. I was trained as an art historian back when, sort of an earlier life, but that has served me well during these tours. So I'll take people through the Palazzo Pubblico, where we're going to see some of the most important frescoes of the Italian Gothic period. Let's see what else, Padua, we might stop in Giotto's Arena Chapel. We might go to an olive oil producer or go out with a truffle hunter and see how he trains his dog and see the commands and see how they work together. Or visit some castles, or just visit some of these cute little wine towns, whether it's in Piedmont or Tuscany or what have you. We understand that on a regular wine tour, people don't want all wine all the time. You need a break. And with our tours, because you do eat so well and you're eating, multi-course wine dinners every night, we're tasting during the day. Many of these tastings, Italian style, they'll bring out bruschette and things like that. So you're eating more. So after a point, it's like pasta. You need a little bit of something else. But as I said, there are people who just want to taste wine, and get as much as they can out of those 6 days in terms of wine education. So wine collectors, wine educators, just people who are sort of in that zone, like to come on our extreme tours. We also reserve some of the harder to get into estates for those tours. We tend not to go to the same places every time. Let's say in Tuscany or in Piedmont, where we spend probably the majority of our time, because we don't want to wear out our welcome. And because we also want to be always sort of looking around and seeing who's doing what and who's developing something new, and keep ourselves interested as the guides and keep ourselves sort of on top of developments.
Can we talk about maybe leeway into planning your wine vacation? Like, what's a good time out to be booking it? Like right now it's March. So, and this is a question to both of you, summer tours, fall tours, spring tours, when should you start planning for these holidays?
My opinion would be the earlier the better. I can book cruises a year in advance, but then it is not an issue whatsoever to get somebody on a summer cruise, a fall cruise, either. But planning wise, it would be nice, especially if you're going to be doing pre and post stays, to have enough time to book, everything in advances. So I would say a year is good, but you can absolutely at this point be booking. If you're going to do individual travel, it's a little bit easier than it is if you're going to do a group. So if you're going to do group travel, it's much easier to have more time, because then you get to reserve the amount of space that you want on the boat. And then you also have the opportunity to have different room categories available for you. Whereas if you wait longer to book, then you have limited space. So you don't have as many options. So
do you feel that the price would go up if they, Christie, if they plan ahead of time, they would be locking in at a secured rate, and they, you know, wouldn't be subjected if the price had gone up? Whereas if you wait to like 2 months out, you know, it's going to be
really hard to tell, because they run different incentives at different, you know, times of the year. Like they do early booking incentives. So right now, if you want to book with for a Wine River cruise in January, or for next January, they're giving a great deal until the end of March. So they do early booking incentives. There's also, you know, deals to be had as the time gets closer as well. So it's kind of difficult to gauge. I would just say that they do run specials all throughout the year. So I wouldn't really necessarily say earlier is better, like I said, for a group, because you can lock in your space.
Also, according to where you want to stay on the ship, and you know, your pre-cruise, your post-cruise, and subject to all availability.
Right.
No.
We actually,
how about your tours?
Sorry?
How about your tours? Like, when's the optimal
We
time
exemplify exactly what Christie's talking about. We have an early bird discount. And then during the course of the year, we might have sales. And those sales are often generated by a tour that has, it's got a green light, but we want more people on that tour to flesh it out a little bit. And our tours, I should say, start minimum 2, maximum 14, usually more like 12. We like to cut it off. So during the course of the year, you know, we offer sales. And for us, or any company like us, it behooves you to sign up for the newsletter, because that's where you hear about those sales. You know, to try to remember to check in every time, you know, you think of it is just hard to do. So we announce our sales in our, we have like a monthly e-newsletter. And
do you want to say where they can sign up for that newsletter?
Oh, well, yes, of course. Our website is, like you see right there, dolcetours.com. And so on the website, there's an e-newsletter sign up. And that's where you request a brochure. We have a little brochure that just gives you a overview of, we have 17 different tours. So that's our brochure. It's just nice to have something, you know, you can stick into your maybe file, your travel wish file. But complete details, including day-by-day itineraries, are on the web. So.
And the one thing that, you know, from my 20 years in the travel industry is travel insurance.
Yep.
And I'm going to get on my high horse here, but travel insurance is just so important, because you never know what's going to happen. And whether, you know, you think you're healthy, your spouse or your traveling companions are healthy, your aging parents are healthy, anything can happen.
It's true.
And
no matter how old you are, something.
It doesn't matter how old you are. Anything can happen. And I strongly suggest purchasing travel insurance, regardless of where you're traveling. If you're traveling with Pat, with Christie, or whoever you're traveling with, and doing it within the first 14 days that you make that booking. The first time, whether it's your booking of your airfare, because I know, Pat, your trips don't include airfare.
Right, we're land only.
So if you're booking your airfare and then trying to back into your trip, and then looking for the land part, or you book your cruise and then you book your airfare. Whatever portion of your travel is booked first, get that travel insurance. It will cover you for pre-existing conditions. And what many people don't realize, you have high blood pressure. That's a pre-existing condition. You go and have a heart attack. It's a pre-existing condition. And you don't know whether, if you have aging parents, or you just don't know. And I can't stress it enough that
we had a poor guy the day before our tour. We had a Sicily tour, and the day before the tour, he fell on some old weathered marble steps in the front of a church in Sicily, and he broke his leg badly enough that there was no way he could do the tour, because he had to have an operation, not just have it set, but he had to have the bone operated on, and so he had to fly back. Poor guy. And he had travel insurance, so that saved him.
I was actually in Europe this summer with two of my daughters. We were actually there for soccer, but one of my daughters got injured during a game. Thankfully, we didn't have to come home, but I knew I had travel insurance and that it wasn't going to be an issue if we had to hop on a flight and come home early. Or, an ambulance came and, we didn't have to go to the hospital, but if we had, it's a big deal to have traveler's insurance.
Yeah, I can't stress it enough. It is just so extremely important.
Yep.
And people just don't, it might cost you a little bit of money, but it's
not that much money for the amount of money that you're spending on your trip.
Right. And you have to also realize that your health insurance might not cover you overseas.
Right.
You have to check into that too.
Absolutely.
Right.
Because, that's where the travel insurance will pick up.
Right.
Yeah.
You just, you don't know, or somebody at home passes away or gets sick and you need to fly home because it's, a parent.
This is a little different, but one tip also is if you're going to drive, it's really good to get an international driver's license. And that's just $20 at AAA. All you do is you go in with a photograph, or they can take it there with your $20 and you can get it right then and there in the spot. And that helps. It's for you. That helps if you get in an accident. Apparently, just the whole insurance nightmare is much easier to navigate if you have an international driver's license.
I did that when I went to Italy.
Yeah. I do it every time. It's good for a year. It's $20. It's well worth it.
Yeah. So is there anything else? Does anybody have any questions concerning travel, wine country travel? What I can think of, we're talking Italy, we're talking cruises, we're talking, summertime, fall time, spring. Is it still okay to book for spring?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm looking. I see some people I know who are online. You're lurking. You should say hello. No, I agree with Christie. Especially if you're booking a custom tour, the earlier out, the better. If you're not booking a custom tour, there are the people who plan in advance. I'm that kind of person. So we send our brochures out around Thanksgiving because a lot of people around the holiday season are already thinking about what they want to do this coming year, and they're making plans, and they're booking their airline, they're booking their trips, and so on and so forth. Then there's the procrastinators, and we welcome them too. And they could be booking very last minute. Now, in our case, the trick is with the hotels. So if you wait too long, it might be that even though we might not have reached our max in terms of how many people we can accommodate, the hotels we're going to have. So that's where, for us, at the very minimum, 60 days in advance, we really sort of need to lock in our tour. You can always ask if it's less than that, and we'll see if we can get rooms. You know, places like Tuscany don't have that many hotels that can accommodate groups, and so they do sell out. They do book up, and that's one reason not to wait.
Pat, your internet connection's getting funky. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Are you there?
There's like a little
Can
bit of
you
delay.
hear me? Testing, testing. 1, 2, 1.
You kind of
Yep.
like froze.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I can hear myself.
I can hear you, but there you go.
Hello, hello?
It
I
Can you
keeps
see me?
freezing a little bit.
Okay. Because I so maybe
Yeah,
Christie should
Christie,
talk
it's
for a
all
while.
yours.
Okay.
I can go on too, because I mean, you know, for 20 years in the wine, you know, in the travel industry and focusing on wine cruises, or wine travel, but go ahead, Christie.
Well, actually, I was also going to draw attention to that my Twitter account is at Christie Unsworth, but my website is christiescruiseandlanddestinations.com. I don't know if you can type that on there or not.
Well, you said it, so
Okay.
I'd rather have the URL paste so that they can find it, you know,
Right.
correctly. It should be in your Twitter profile, though, no?
I'm not sure. I'll have to look at that.
Christie's new to Twitter. And everything.
Debbie's
We lost
helping
Pat.
out with the technology.
We lost
Where'd she go? Maybe she's going to try and log back on and see if that helps with the connection.
Maybe. Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah.
But
as far as spring, like I said, I think it's I could probably get 2 to 4 people on, and again, space is limited, so you'd have to be a little more flexible for what kind of room that you have. But yes, there is availability for spring.
oh, well, that's good. And is there anything else you want to add? Because we'll close it out. We lost Pat. She's out.
Oh, I don't think so. Again, just that it's Christie's
Wait,
Cruise
she's
Land.
coming back in. She's coming back in. There she is.
There I am. Yoo-hoo!
Oh,
Sorry about that. I have no idea what's going on.
Too many people using the internet in your building.
Maybe. It's New York.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, we're going to wrap it up a little bit here. You know, is there any parting words you want to let everybody know about, you know, planning a trip? Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean,
planning a
I
trip
did
to
want to say a couple of things about why go with a tour operator, and not just to, you know, toot our own horn, but just in general, because of course
it's important that people know, because it really is hard to plan in advance, you know, plan it on your own. And I think in this day and age of do it yourself, everyone feels empowered that they can do this themselves and they can cut out the middleman. But the middleman is so important, because Pat, Christie, you guys got the contacts. You guys got the contacts to make that vacation a wow factor.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anybody can do it. Anybody can book it. But there's, first of all, people don't have time to do the research. People are busy. They barely get vacation, let alone have the time to plan their vacation. Most people who plan vacations are the women of the household. Many of them plan it during their 15-minute lunch hour. You know, it's like you really don't have time to go on to TripAdvisor and Google and everywhere else and really know what you're getting into, number one. Number two, a lot of people, I think the most common mistake that people make is they, you know, their eyes are too big for their plate. You know, they overbook and they underestimate the time it takes to get from point A to point B. So they might call us up and say, oh, you know, we want to do Venice and Rome and Florence, and we've got 6 days. It's like, well, theoretically you could, but you're going to be spending 60% of your waking hours on the road, in the train or on the autostrada. Do you really want to do that? Or even within a given area like Tuscany, like, Chianti, you can look at a map and those squiggles don't look very far. But when you're on that squiggle, it can be not 10 minutes, but 60 minutes of switchback turns on a tiny 1-lane road. We know that. We know how long it takes to get from point A to point B. So we can pack in the most consolidated, great stuff, and you don't have to waste your time either before the trip looking around for the best things to do, or when you're there trying to find that gravel road that goes to that winery that's unmarked. We make those scouting trips beforehand, so we know what where to go. The other thing is, and this I find very interesting, because we get a lot of the people who are really in the know about wine might say, look, we want a custom tour with you, which we do. They give us a list of like big marquee name wineries and they want to go to them. It's like, okay, fine, we'll investigate. But what we know from experience of 17 years of going to many of these places is just being a marquee name doesn't make it a great experience. You know, it could be that, first of all, they might say no because they aren't interested in tourists, or they may just be indifferent to you, or the person who's in charge of giving the tours could be very lackluster. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you don't know until you go there. And so having gone through, that's one reason we keep sort of changing up wineries, so that we sort of have a sense of who's on staff there right now, who from the family is hosting us right now. And we know who's going to give the kind of sort of personal, memorable experience that's going to be fun for you and make you feel like part of the family and not like, you know, some kind of nudge they don't want to deal with. And that you don't know just from the name. That is really where having somebody on the ground who has that kind of experience, you know, has the advantage over just an internet search.
And there's no disadvantage to using a travel agent or a tour operator.
There absolutely isn't. You're not saving any more money.
You're
actually probably spending more money doing it on your own.
You are. You're spending money and you're spending time, valuable time, and you are getting a quality experience with the travel agent or a tour operator. We're using, you know, hotels and cruise lines and travel guides that have done this for a really long time. We have other clients that we have that have used them and trust them. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is that a lot of times with the online companies, you have to pay right away. So you can get this deal and you have to pay right now. Whereas with my agency, you can go on a payment plan. So you do the down payment and then we set you up with your payment schedule until you're ready to leave for your trip. And you also do get the insurance component. So I'm able to take your air and transfers, cruise, or your land tour and price everything out for you and give you an insurance quote for the entire trip.
And it's really important to look at, you know, when you're dealing with online, you know, and you have to make that decision right away and you have to pay right away. Don't let that great deal get the best of you, because that great deal is probably not such a great deal. And
yeah, I think it's fairly standard to put down a deposit and then it's 60 days prior to departure is when your balance is due.
Yeah.
That's how most That's
so
how we do it.
People get taken by that, it's a great deal. You have to pay for it now. And, who knows what happens. You really got to think, it is 60 days out. There's a deposit when you do it. And, be smart about your travel. Get to know the person that's booking it for you. Get to know Pat. Get to know Christy. Regardless of where you're traveling, use a travel agent. Get to know your tour operator. Don't try and do it on your own, especially if it's really entailed, and especially when you're traveling abroad, because you don't know the laws. And when I say the laws, you don't know, it can be as simple as driving on the right side of the road or the wrong side of the road, or whether you need a visa, whether you need an international driver's license, because people don't think I'm going to rent a car. It's not like getting off in Florida, flying down to Florida for a weekend and renting a car. You need that international driver's license. So I really, I can't stress it enough. And that's the travel agent in me coming out.
Well, it's nice because we have relationships too with the people that you're going to be traveling with, or the people that you're going, or the companies that you're going to be using while you're overseas. Again, if something goes wrong, you call your tour operator or travel agent, and we get in contact with the people that we need to take care and resolve situations.
This is true.
You have a lifeline.
Yeah,
right.
This is true. I mean, I do understand very well the impulse to be in charge of yourself. I mean, some people have a hard time putting their lives in somebody else's hands, even for 7 days. I've always said, thank God we do wine tours and not coffee tours, so people relax after like 48 hours, all the type A's who come on our trip, they're like, oh yeah, this is good. We can enjoy this. We can relax now. But I want to add that we keep our tours relatively short. They're 6 to 7 days, knowing two things. One, younger people don't get much vacation. So, that may be it. You fly over, you travel with us for 6 to 7 days, you fly back. But a lot of people do, and Christy, I think this is true with your company too, they will do independent travel before and or after the group tour. And I think that's a nice compromise, because that way you can have your elbow room to do what you want without a group of other people, just, you and your travel mate, then enjoy the company of a group, and then be free again to go wherever you want. And again, with a 6-day tour, that's possible within sort of a, 2-week to 10-day framework. That allows a little time for extra independent travel before or after. And we help people with that. I mean, if you're spending the money to come with us, we're absolutely happy to, advise you about pre and post tour travel for free. Just offer our advice on what would make a nice add-on to your itinerary. It's
and you would definitely know, because you've probably been there and done that.
Yeah. We know how far things are and what's really just an unreasonable trip given the amount of time that you have. It makes me think, I went to Italy when I was in college and got an Italian boyfriend. And I remember I lived in Indiana, and he was going to visit somebody in Chicago. And he looked at the map of America and thought from Chicago to Bloomington, Indiana was maybe about 15 to 30 minutes. It's like hours. So, I mean, this is America, it's much bigger, but I do think that we do make that mistake as well, looking at maps of Italy. It's like, I want to conquer it all. And you can't, and you shouldn't. You should just slow it down and you know, stop and smell the roses, really. That's what vacation
Right.
is for.
Yeah. Stop and drink the wine.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Like you're the only one that came on this today with the wine glass. I finished my wine. I actually was drinking a Provence rosé.
Well, I'm not drinking wine, actually. I'm drinking, I have to show you. This is my new thing. I just wrote a story about it. This is grape ale. So it's a hybrid of wine and beer that Americans are doing it too. If you talk to the microbrewers, they're into this big time. But so this is called.
So what is it?
Beer Bera, as in
beer and wine.
Beer Bera. So what they do is they will basically make a beer, and during a point in the fermentation process, they will mix it with wine must, possibly aging it after in grape barrels. But this here. Do you see? This is like kind of pinkish. See if I can tip it against. You see, it's kind of pink.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like probably 30 or 40% Barbera, which is, you know, great Piedmont.
And then what kind of beer is it?
Well, it's an ale. So they would make kind of a blonde ale that's, you know, not neutral. It's not a Pilsner, but it's the ale part of it. Yeah, the hops is very low. When you drink this kind of beer, it's interesting because it doesn't, if you're used to a hoppy beer like an IPA, like I love, it doesn't taste like beer. It is like, it's kind of like grape juice. It's kind of like beer. It's this interesting in-between thing. I mean, there's a lot of fruit ales being made out there. This one just happens to be with grapes. And as I said, the Italians are sort of leading the charge on this whole thing. I'm sort of trying to track Americans who are doing it as well because I want to write about that.
I went to a bunch of breweries this weekend.
No, send me a tweet.
I went to a bunch of breweries this weekend up in the Hudson Valley, and I didn't find anyone doing that.
Well, you know, they should because they've got grapes up there. There are people on There's, I think, Captain Lawrence, who's out towards Montauk somewhere, and Transmitter here
in White, like Katona, like that area, White Plains.
Yeah, and Transmitter in Long Island City is doing it. Russian River Brewery in Sonoma is doing it. Oh gosh, there was one I just went to in Southern Napa. They're out and about, and others. This last week was Brooklyn Beer Week, and we're straying from the topic, but so I went to this tasting that was home brewers who are on the point of sort of on the verge of getting a license, and so they're, you know, very much on the cutting edge here in New York, and they a number of them have done it as a one-off. They want to do it again. Some of them time it for harvest time because that's when they can get the grapes. Anyway, it's niche. It's totally niche, but it
really is.
Yeah.
So is it good tasting? I mean, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I find it. It's its own category. It's refreshing. It's fruity. As I said, it's very light in hops. So if you're looking for that bitter hopsy quality, which I like a lot, you're not going to get it. And so it took me a while to like understand what this was or like what it was. Some of them are sour beers too, which is a whole different category.
I learned about them this weekend. Sour and farmhouse ales. Yeah. I learned about all that this weekend.
Yeah. So it's good stuff. So that's what I'm drinking tonight.
So, well, that's good. I'm going to have to search for that. I'm going to have to go down to Captain Lawrence.
Well, next time you're in New York, also go to Italy.
I'll be there tomorrow.
Well, go to Italy because they have a good wine bar, the Birreria, on the roof.
Okay.
And they make their own beer as well as sell a lot of craft Italian beer. And their selection is always good. It's always changing. It's really one of the best spots to sample craft Italian beer in New York. So
okay, I'll be in the city tomorrow.
They've got a New York grape ale.
So I'll have to look. So I want to thank both of you for joining me, Christy and Pat. I mean, this is great.
Nice to meet you.
And I really, hopefully we can do this again. Maybe we can do this again in the fall or something, and spark up travel for next year.
Sounds
but I want to really thank you. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys had a good time.
I might have a vineyard as the background if it's in the fall, because we're usually.
Oh, that would be freaking awesome. I try and do this once a month, so and different topics every month. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your evening and joining me here on Wine Time and talking about wine country travel.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks for
that. And Pat, it was great to meet you face to face finally.
Sure.
20 years.
Yes.
I wish it was last. Cheers. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.